to Heavy Story Time. We are going to be reading a story, but first up we are going to read the Bible, and then we're going to be doing synopsis, and then no synopsis. I'm okay. And then you're going to be reading Treasure Island by Robert Louis Stevenson. Louis.
Robert Eulis.
Robert Louis.
Oh.
Louis.
Are you ready?
Louis. Delete message.
What? No. Oh. Yep.
Make sure to like button, subscribe, hit the bell to never miss another video. Bye bye.
No, JJ, don't say goodbye.
Hello! How are you doing today? All right. So I'm going to read a story. First, I'm messing up the partition behind me. All right. So first, I'm in 1 Corinthians chapter 10. I see 2 people on board tonight. So thank you. Thank you. Thank you. By the way, I just want to say that the YouTube channel has gone through the roof. We had 74 views yesterday on the YouTube channel, which might be a record for one day. So, yeah, and I have posted all 9 of the Treasure Island episodes onto the YouTube channel. Sorry, we have some thunder in the background. All right, so now we're on 1 Corinthians chapter 10. I'm going to be reading from the English Standard Version of the Bible. Let me begin. For I do not want you to be unaware, brothers, that our fathers were all under the cloud, and all passed through the sea, and all were baptized into Moses in the cloud and in the sea. And all ate the same spiritual food, and all drank the same spiritual drink. For they drank from the spiritual rock that followed them, and the rock was Christ. Nevertheless, with most of them God was not pleased, for they were overthrown in the wilderness. Now these things took place as examples for us, that we might not desire evil as they did. Do not be idolaters, as some of them were, as it is written. The people sat down to eat and drink and rose up to play. We must not indulge in sexual immorality, as some of them did, and 23,000 fell in a single day. We must not put Christ to the test, as some of them did, and were destroyed by serpents, nor grumble, as some of them did, and were destroyed by the destroyer. Now these things happened to them as an example, but they were written down for our instruction, on whom the end of the ages has come. Therefore let anyone who thinks that he stands take heed lest he fall. No temptation has overtaken you that is not common to man. God is faithful, and he will not let you be tempted beyond your ability. But with the temptation he will also provide the way of escape, that you may be able to endure it. Therefore, my beloved, flee from idolatry. I speak as to sensible people. Judge for yourselves what I say. The cup of blessing that we bless, is it not a participation in the blood of Christ? The bread that we break, is it not a participation in the body of Christ? Because there is one bread, we who are many are one body, for we all partake of the one bread. Consider the people of Israel. Are not those who eat the sacrifices participants in the altar? What do I imply then? That food offered to idols is anything, or that an idol is anything? No, I imply that what pagans sacrifice they offer to demons and not to God. I do not want you to be participants with demons. You cannot drink the cup of the Lord and the cup of demons. You cannot partake of the table of the Lord and the table of demons. Shall we provoke the Lord to jealousy? Are we stronger than he? All things are lawful, but not all things are helpful. All things are lawful, but not all things build up. Let no one seek his own good, but the good of his neighbor. Eat whatever is sold in the meat market without raising any question on the ground of conscience. For the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof. If one of the unbelievers invites you to dinner and you are disposed to go, eat whatever is set before you without raising any question on the ground of conscience. But if someone says to you, "This has been offered in sacrifice," then do not eat it for the sake of the one who informed you, and for the sake of conscience. I do not mean your conscience, but his. For why should my liberty be determined by someone else's conscience? If I partake with thankfulness, why am I denounced because of that for which I give thanks? So whether you eat or drink or whatever you do, do all to the glory of God. Give no offense to Jews or to Greeks or to the church of God. Just as I try to please everyone in everything I do, not seeking my own advantage, but that of many, that they may be saved. Be imitators of me as I am of Christ. And that last verse is actually part of chapter 11, but seems to go along with the ending of chapter 10. The chapter divisions and the verse divisions were created in the medieval period, and sometimes they don't always coincide with the thoughts of the writer. In this case, I think that whoever edited the English Standard Version did a good job of including that last verse, chapter 11, verse 1, with the thoughts that Paul was making in chapter 10. So I hope that you enjoyed the reading of the scripture. That is 1 Corinthians chapter 10. So now we're going to go on to Treasure Island. Basically, in Treasure Island, Jim Hawkins took over again as the narrator, and somehow or other, I think everybody got swallowed by an octopus. So that was... Can octopus swallow people? I'm not really sure.
A shark ate the island.
A shark ate the island. Okay, that's what JJ says. And if you want to find out what really happened, then go back and watch the last episode. But I'm going to go on. This is chapter 20, Silver's Embassy. So there's obviously an embassy that's made out of silver, and that's what we're going to be writing about or reading about. No, okay, never mind. It's Long John Silver's Embassy, but the first two names, Long John, are long gone. So it is just Silver's Embassy. All right, let me begin. Sure enough, there were two men just outside the stockade, one of them waving a white cloth, the other no less a person than Silver himself, standing placidly by. It was still quite early, and the coldest morning that I think I ever was abroad in, a chill that pierced into the marrow. The sky was bright and cloudless overhead, and the tops of the trees shone rosily in the sun. But where Silver stood with his lieutenant, all was still in shadow, and they waded knee-deep in a low white vapor that had crawled during the night out of the morass. The chill and the vapor, taken together, told a poor tale of the island. It was plainly a damp, feverish, unhealthy spot. "Keep indoors, men," said the captain. 10 to 1, this a trick." Then he hailed the buccaneer. "Who goes? Stand or we fire?" "Flag of truce," cried Silver. The captain was in the porch, keeping himself carefully out of the way of a treacherous shot, should any be intended. He turned and spoke to us. "Doctor's watch on the lookout. Dr. Livesey, take the north side, if you please. Jim, the east. Gray, west. The watch below, all hands to load muskets. Lively men and careful." And then he turned again to the mutineers. "And what do you want with your flag of truce?" he cried. This time it was the other man who replied. "Captain Silver, sir, to come on board and make terms," he shouted. "Captain Silver, don't know him. Who's he?" cried the captain, and we could hear him adding to himself, "Captain, is it? My heart, and here's promotion. Me, sir. These poor lads have chosen me, Captain, after your desertion, sir," laying a particular emphasis upon the word desertion. "We're willing to submit if we can come to terms, and no bones about it. All I ask is your word, Captain Smollett, to let me safe and sound out of this here stockade, and 1 minute to get out a shot before a gun is fired." "My man," said Captain Smollett, "I have not the slightest desire to talk to you. If you wish to talk to me, you can come. That's all. If there's any treachery, it'll be on your side, and the Lord help you." "That's enough, Captain," shouted Long John cheerily. "A word from you's enough. I know a gentleman, and you may lay to that." We could see the man who carried the flag of truce attempting to hold Silver back, nor was that wonderful seeing how cavalier had been the captain's answer. But Silver laughed at him aloud and slapped him on the back, as if the idea of alarm had been absurd. Then he advanced to the stockade, threw over his crutch, got a leg up, and with great vigor and skill succeeded in surmounting the fence and dropping safely to the other side. I will confess that I was far too much taken up with what was going on to be of the slightest use as sentry. Indeed, I had already deserted my eastern loophole and crept up behind the captain, who had now seated himself on the threshold with his elbows on his knees, his head in his hands, and his eyes fixed on the water as it bubbled out of the old iron kettle in the sand. He was whistling to himself, "Come, lassies and lads!" Silver had terrible hard work getting up the knoll, what with the steepness of the incline, the thick tree stumps, and the soft sand. He and his crutch were as helpless as a ship in stays. But he stuck to it like a man in silence, and at last arrived before the captain, whom he saluted in the handsomest style. He was tricked out of his best, an immense blue coat, thick with brass buttons, hung as low as to his knees, and a fine laced hat was set on the back of his head. "Here you are, my man," said the captain, raising his head. "You had better sit down." "You ain't a-goin' to let me inside, Captain," complained Long John. "It's a main cold morning, to be sure, sir, to sit outside upon the sand." "Why, Silver," said the captain, "if you had pleased to be an honest man, you might have been sitting in your galley. It's your own doing. You're either my ship's cook, and then you were treated handsome, or Captain Silver, a common mutineer and pirate, and then you can go hang." "Well, well, Captain," returned the sea cook, sitting down as he was bidden on the sand. "You'll have to give me a hand up again, that's all. A sweet pretty place you have of it here. Ah, there's Jim. The top of the morning to you, Jim. Doctor, there's my service. Why, there you all are together like a happy family, in the manner of speaking." "If you have anything to say, my man, better say it," said the captain. "Right you were, Captain Smollett," replied Silver. "Duty is duty, to be sure. Well, now, you look here. That was a good lay of yours last night. I don't deny it was a good lay. Some of you pretty handy in the handspike end, and I'll not deny neither, but what some of my people was shook. Maybe all was shook. Maybe I was shook myself. Maybe that's why I'm here for terms. But you mark me, Captain. It won't do twice, by thunder. We'll have to do sentry go and ease off a point or so in the rum. Maybe you think we were all a sheet in the wind's eye, but I'll tell you I was sober. I was only dog tired, and if I'd awoke a second sooner, I'd a caught you at the act, I would. He wasn't dead when I got round to him, was he?" "Well," said Captain Smollett, as cool as he could be. All that Silver said was a riddle to him, but you would never have guessed it from his tone. As for me, I began to have an inkling. Ben Gunn's last words came to my mind. I began to suppose that he had paid the buccaneers a visit while they all lay drunk together round their fire, and I reckoned up with glee that we had only 14 enemies to deal with. Well, here it is, said Silver. We want that treasure, and we'll have it. That's our point. You would just as soon save your lives, I reckon, and that's yours. You have a chart, haven't you? That's as may be, replied the captain. Oh, well, you have, I know that, returned Long John. You needn't be so husky with a man. There ain't no particle of service in that. Particle? I don't know. Maybe that's the way Long John would have said it. And you may lay to it. What I mean is, we want your chart. Now, I never meant you no harm myself. That won't do with me, my man, interrupted the captain. We know exactly what you meant to do, and we don't care. For now, you see, you can't do it. And the captain looked at him calmly and proceeded to fill a pipe. If Abe Gray, Silver broke out. Avast there, cried Mr. Smollett. Gray told me nothing, and I asked him nothing, and what's more, I would see you and him and this whole island blown clean out of the water into blazes first. So there's my mind for you. Any man on that? This little whiff of temper seemed to cool Silver down. He had been growing nettled before, but now he pulled himself together. Like enough, said he. I would set no limits to what gentlemen might consider ship-shape, or might not, as the case were. And seeing as how you were about to take a pipe, captain, I'll make so free as to do likewise. And he filled a pipe and lighted it, and the two men sat silently smoking for quite a while, now looking each other in the face, now stopping their tobacco, now leaning forward to spit. It was as good as the play to see them. Now, resumed Silver, here it is. You give us the chart to get the treasure by, and drop shooting poor seamen and shoving of their heads in while asleep. You do that, and we'll offer you a choice. Either you come aboard along of us, once the treasure's shipped, and then I'll give you my affidavy upon my word of honor to clap you somewhere safe ashore, or if that ain't to your fancy, some of my hands being rough and having old scores on account of hazing, then you can stay here, you can. We'll divide stores with you, man for man, and I'll give my affidavy as before, to speak the first ship I sight, and send 'em here to pick you up. Now you'll own that's talking. Handsomer you couldn't look to get, not you, and I hope, raising his voice, that all hands in this here blockhouse will overhaul my words, for what is spoke to one is spoke to all. Captain Smollett rose from his seat and knocked out the ashes of his pipe in the palm of his left hand. Is that all? He asked. Every last word, by thunder, answered John. Refuse that, and you've seen the last of me but musket balls. Very good, said the captain. Now you'll hear me. If you'll come up one by one, unarmed, I'll engage to clap you all in irons, and take you home to a fair trial in England. If you won't, my name is Alexander Smollett. I've flown my sovereign's colors, and I'll see you all to Davy Jones. You can't find the treasure. You can't sail the ship. There's not a man among you fit to sail a ship. You can't fight us. Gray there got away from 5 of you. Your ship's in irons, Master Silver. You're on the lee shore, and so you'll find. I stand here and tell you so, and they're the last good words you'll get from me, for in the name of heaven I'll put a bullet in your back when next I meet you. Tramp, my lad, bundle out of this, please, hand over hand, and double quick. Silver's face was a picture. His eyes started in his head with wrath. He shook the fire out of his pipe. Give me a hand up, he cried. Not I, returned the captain. Who'll give me a hand up? He roared. Not a man among us moved. Growling the foulest imprecations, he crawled along the sand till he got hold of the porch and could hoist himself again upon his crutch. Then he spat into the spring. There, he cried. That's what I think of you. Before an hour's out, I'll stove in your old blockhouse like a rum puncheon. Laugh, by thunder, laugh. Before an hour's out, you'll laugh upon the other side. Them that die'll be the lucky ones. And with the dreadful oath, he stumbled off, plowed down the sand, was helped across the stockade after 4 or 5 failures by the man with the flag of truce, and disappeared in an instant afterward among the trees. Chapter 21, The Attack. As soon as Silver disappeared, the captain, who had been closely watching him, turned toward the interior of the house, and found not a man of us at his post but Gray. It was the first time we had ever seen him angry. "Quarters!" he roared. And then, as we all slunk back to our places, "Gray," he said, "I'll put your name in the leg. You've stood by your duty like a seaman. Mr. Trelawney, I'm surprised at you, sir. Doctor, I thought you had worn the king's coat. If that was how you served at Fontenoy, sir, you'll have been better in your berth." The doctor's watch were all back at their loopholes. The rest were busy loading the spare muskets. The square muskets. I'm sure that's what it meant to say. Lost my place. The rest were busy loading the spare muskets, and every one with a red face, you may be certain, and a flea in his ear, as the saying is. The captain looked on for a while in silence. Then he spoke. "My lads," said he, "I've given Silver a broadside. I pitched it in red hot on purpose, and before the hour's out, as he said, we shall be boarded. We're outnumbered, I needn't tell you that, but we fight in shelter, and a minute ago I should have said we fought with discipline. I've no manner of doubt that we can drub them if you choose." Then he went the rounds, and saw, as he said, that all was clear. On the 2 short sides of the house, east and west, there were only 2 loopholes. On the south side where the porch was, 2 again, and on the north side 5. There was a round score of muskets for the 7 of us. The firewood had been built into 4 piles, tables, you might say, one about the middle of each side, and on each of these tables some ammunition and 4 loaded muskets were laid ready to the hand of the defenders. In the middle the cutlass lay ranged. "Toss out the fire," said the captain. "The chill is past, and we mustn't have smoke in our eyes." The iron fire basket was carried bodily out by Mr. Trelawney, and the embers smothered among sand. "Hawkins hasn't had his breakfast. Hawkins, help yourself, and back to your post to eat it," continued Captain Smollett. "Lively now, lads. You'll want it before you've done. Hunter, serve out a round of brandy to all hands." And while this was going on, the captain completed, in his own mind, the plan of the defense. "Doctor, you will take the door," he resumed. "See, and don't expose yourself. Keep within and fire through the porch. Hunter, take the east side, there. Joyce, you stand by the west, my man. Mr. Trelawney, you're the best shot. You and Gray will take this long north side with the 5 loopholes. It's there the danger is. If they can get up to it and fire in upon us through our own ports, things would begin to look dirty. Hawkins, neither you nor I are much account at the shooting. We'll stand by to load and bear a hand." As the captain had said, the chill was past. As soon as the sun had climbed above our girdle of trees, it fell with all its force upon the clearing, and drank up the vapors at a draught. Soon the sand was baking, and the resin melting in the logs of the blockhouse. Jackets and coats were flung aside, shirts thrown open at the neck, and rolled up to the shoulders, and we stood there, each at his post, in a fever of heat and anxiety. An hour passed away. "Hang 'em," said the captain. "This is as dull as the doldrums. Gray, whistle for a wind." And just at that moment came the first news of the attack. "If you please, sir," said Joyce. "If I see any one, am I to fire?" "I told you so," cried the captain. "Thank you, sir," returned Joyce, with the same quiet civility. Nothing followed for a time, but the remark had set us all on the alert. Straining ears and eyes, the muskets with their pieces balanced in their hands, the captain out in the middle of the blockhouse with his mouth very tight and a frown on his face. So some seconds passed, till suddenly Joyce whipped up his musket and fired. The report had scarcely died away ere it was repeated and repeated from without in a scattering volley, shot behind shot, like a string of geese from every side of the enclosure. Several bullets struck the log house, but not one entered, and as the smoke cleared away and vanished, the stockade and the woods around it looked as quiet and empty as before. Not a bough waved, not the gleam of a musket barrel betrayed the presence of our foes. "Did you hit your man?" asked the captain. "No, sir," replied Joyce. "I believe not, sir." Next best thing to tell the truth," muttered Captain Smollett. "Load his gun, Hawkins. How many should you say there were on your side, Doctor?" "I know precisely," said Dr. Livesey. 3 shots were fired on this side. I saw 3 flashes, 2 close together, 1 farther to the west. "3!" repeated the captain. "And how many on yours, Mr. Trelawney?" But this was not so easily answered. There had come many from the north, 7 by the squire's computation, 8 or 9 according to Gray. From the east and west only a single shot had been fired. It was plain, therefore, that the attack would be developed from the north, and that on the other 3 sides we were only to be annoyed by a show of hostilities. But Captain Smollett made no change in his arrangements. If the mutineers succeeded in crossing the stockade, he argued, they would take possession of any unprotected loophole and shoot us down like rats on our stronghold. Nor had we much time left us for thought. Suddenly, with a loud huzza, a little cloud of pirates leapt from the woods on the north side and ran straight on the stockade. And the same moment the fire was once more opened from the woods, and a rifle ball sang through the doorway and knocked the doctor's musket into bits. The boarders swarmed over the fence like monkeys. Squire and Gray fired again and yet again. 3 men fell, 1 forward into the enclosure, 2 back on the outside. But of these, 1 was evidently more frightened than hurt, for he was on his feet again in a crack and instantly disappeared among the trees. 2 had bit the dust, 1 had fled, 4 had made good their footing inside our defenses, while from the shelter of the woods 7 or 8 men, each evidently supplied with several muskets, kept up a hot though useless fire on the log house. The 4 who had boarded made straight before them for the building, shouting as they ran, and the men among the trees shouted back to encourage them. Several shots were fired, but such was the hurry of the marksmen, not one appeared to have taken effect. In a moment the 4 pirates had swarmed up the mound and were upon us. The head of Job Anderson, the boatswain, appeared at the middle loophole. "At 'em! All hands! All hands!" he roared in a voice of thunder. At the same moment another pirate grasped Hunter's musket by the muzzle, wrenched it from his hands, plucked it through the loophole, and with one stunning blow laid the poor fellow senseless on the floor. Meanwhile, a 3rd, running unharmed all round the house, appeared suddenly in the doorway and fell with his cutlass on the doctor. Our position was utterly reversed. A moment since we were firing under cover at an exposed enemy. Now it was we who lay uncovered and could not return a blow. The log house was full of smoke, to which we owed our comparative safety. Cries and confusion, the flashes and reports of pistol shots, and one loud groan rang in my ears. "Out, lads, out, and fight 'em in the open, cutlasses!" cried the captain. I snatched a cutlass from the pile, and someone at the same time, snatching another, gave me a cut across the knuckles, which I hardly felt. I dashed out of the door into the clear sunlight. Someone was close behind, I knew not whom. Right in front, the doctor was pursuing his assailant down the hill, and just as my eyes fell upon him, beat down his guard, and sent him sprawling on his back with a great slash across his face. "Round the house, lads, round the house!" cried the captain, and even in the hurly-burly I perceived a change in his voice. Mechanically I obeyed, turned eastward, and with my cutlass raised ran round the corner of the house. Next moment I was face to face with Anderson. He roared again, and his hanger went up above his head, flashing in the sunlight. I had not time to be afraid, but as the blow still hung impending, leapt in a trice upon one side, and missing my foot in the soft sand, rolled headlong down the slope. When I had first sallied from the door, the other mutineers had been already swarming up the palisade to make an end of us. One man in a red nightcap, with his cutlass in his mouth, had even got upon the top and thrown a leg across. Well, so short had been the interval that when I found my feet again, all was in the same posture. The fellow with the red nightcap, still halfway over, another still just showing his head above the top of the stockade, and yet in this breath of time the fight was over and the victory was ours. Gray, following close behind me, had cut down the big boatswain ere he had time to recover from his last blow. Another had been shot at a loophole in the very act of firing into the house, and now lay in agony, the pistol still smoking in his hand. A third, as I had seen, the doctor had disposed of at a blow. Of the four who had scaled the palisade, one remained unaccounted for, and he, having left his cutlass on the field, was now clambering out again with the fear of death upon him. "Fire! Fire from the house!" cried the doctor. "And you, lads, back into cover!" But his words were unheeded. No shot was fired, and the last boarder made good his escape and disappeared with the rest into the wood. In 3 seconds nothing remained of the attacking party but the 5 who had fallen, 4 on the inside and 1 on the outside of the palisade. The doctor and Gray and I ran full speed for shelter. The survivors would soon be back where they had left their muskets, and at any moment the fire might recommence. The house was by this time somewhat cleared of smoke, and we saw at a glance the price we had paid for victory. Hunter lay beside his loophole, stunned. Joyce by his, shot through the head, never to move again, while right in the center the squire was supporting the captain, one as pale as the other. "The captain's wounded," said Mr. Trelawney. "Have they run?" asked Mr. Smollett. All that could, you may be bound," returned the doctor. "But there's 5 of them will never run again." "5!" cried the captain. "Come, that's better. 5 against 3 leaves us 4 to 9. That's better odds than we had at starting. We're 7 to 19 then, or thought we were, and that's as bad to bear." That is the end of chapter 21, I believe we're on, and also the end of part 4. So part 5 we'll read next time. It's called My Sea Adventure. My hope is that next time will be tomorrow, so we can start part 5, My Sea Adventure, and chapter 22, which is called How My Sea Adventure Began. The first word is there.
Read the comments.
And I saw boo. Kimmy didn't like my joke. All right. So there's this picture here. The boarders swarmed over the fence like monkeys. Here is picture. And I think that we have an art gallery coming. It's an art gallery of sorts. Daniel's worked really hard on this, so he'll describe it to you on his own. And in the meantime, I'll see you next time. That is exactly what I was thinking. Granny Bear says there, or there. and I'm not telling. Till next time. I'll see you then. Here's Daniel.
Hello. So I got this Lego set. It was expensive. It came with some nice figures, and here's the build. I'm still working on like modding it and everything, but yeah, it's really nice.
Dad has.
Alright, good night, y'all.